All right, y'all boys. This is the week. UFC is back. But before we get into Patty and Justin Gaethje content for UFC 324, I got a little 2-for-1 special tonight, rather. So for those that watch PFL, and like I said, this year we gonna cover a lot of shit. UFC, PFL, One Championship, but my boy Bryan battle. So we're gonna talk about Bryan battle for a little bit, and then some White House shit, because I did say I was gonna make a White House video about the shit, especially what the fuck I just seen today. Perfect time for me to talk about the White House card. Also, apparently next month is when they're gonna actually start listing off the fights. But anyway, first thing first, it's your boy DHP. Y'all know the rest, man. My nigga Bryan battle, as y'all know, last year, like late last year, he got signed with the PFL after bullshitting around with the UFC with the weight cuts, shit like that. I still fuck with Bryan battle. But to be completely objective, I hope this is more like a wake-up call, because he's, realistically speaking, like, if he keep the way he fights, and if he keeps improving his craft, he gonna be a legit contender. I thought, go back to my older videos, I always thought that he could be, with time, he could be a player in their welterweight division. But we all know the shit was happening with his weight cuts and all that. Then he moved up to middleweight, and the nigga still missed weight. But anyway, Bryan battle, this is a wake-up call. He got signed with the PFL late last year. So now, and I'm gonna do I'm gonna do more research on PFL, how they doing shit, because the way PFL run their seasons, not seasons, but the way they run their events and their tournaments and shit like that, it's actually like it's like a stick and ball sports league. You know, stick and ball, we usually say this in racing, where you have, like, so sports, you have stick and ball sports, hockey, football, baseball, basketball. Then you have motorsports with, like, race cars and dirt bikes, all that shit. Stick and ball sports. PFL is ran like a damn football or basketball season. So I gotta do more research on that, because you gotta qualify. Like, you got these tournament fights, and then you qualify for a specific seeding, and then, you know, there's a lot of shit I just found out about with the PFL. Because, I mean, I've watched PFL. Don't get the fuck up. I was watching PFL for a cool minute, but I wasn't really paying attention to how they actually ran their shit. I would just tune in. I said this before in my older videos. I only tune in for the fights of the people that, you know, that I supported. Some of them was UFC people, and some of them is just a couple people that, you know, people were sending me through DMs and shit like that for me to watch out for, and I ended up watching them and supporting them. But so Bryan battle, he's facing Johnny Eblen, I believe it is. It's the March card in Pittsburgh. Shout out Pittsburgh, even though our Steelers ain't do a goddamn thing, you know, shout out Pittsburgh. So they got a card in March in Pittsburgh, and Bryan battle is headlining against Johnny Eblen, and that's a huge matchup, because Johnny Eblen was like, was he like a welterweight or like a middleweight title holder before they reset? I know PFL, they reset their weight class champions. I gotta do more research, but I'm pretty sure they reset their champions, because the heavyweight champion is no longer Francis, it's the other guy, because they reset the whole tournament or whatever. But for Johnny Eblen, and I've seen a couple of fights of him, he's real good. This is a huge matchup for my nigga Bryan battle, because if he beats him, that definitely puts him in the catbird seat to actually win a champion, or at least get a title shot. You know what I mean? Beating Johnny Eblen would be good for his resume. So I don't know if it's for the title or it's for, like, one of the main fights in the tournament for like a good seeding or whatever. When we get there, when we get close to March, I'm gonna talk about it much more. But I just want to talk about it now because Bryan battled for the good and for the bad. Bryan battle is I ain't gonna say he's like he's a dominant championship type material fighter, but Bryan battle is pretty good, and he's too damn good to be doing the dumb shit that he's doing, which is why I hope this is him going to PFL, signing, getting another shot at some type of mainstream. Because whether you think UFC is way better than PFL, or even I have my own criticism about PFL, especially with the owner, the way he's doing shit. PFL is still, quote unquote, a mainstream MMA organization. So Bryan Battle getting another opportunity at a mainstream MMA organization, he shouldn't take this lightly. He shouldn't take this lightly, because even say like if he go out there, let's just say on some hypothetical shit, Bryan Battle go out there, destroy Johnny Emblin and destroy that whole middleweight division, right? He could potentially be back in the good graces with Hunter Campbell and Mick Maynard and Dana and all of them, and he'd come back to the UFC. We've seen it over and over with a lot of these niggas from like Strike Force and, you know, Rising, all this other shit. If you in the good graces with the UFC, you can leave and always come back, you know. So I just want to quickly speak about that, because it's my nigga Bryan Battle, you know. So I'm gonna support him all the way with that. So on to the main topic at hand, the White House. Now, I'm not gonna dance around this, because this need to be said, and I really don't care who like it or who don't like it, but I need to speak my thoughts and opinions on this, because the UFC at the White House, and we're gonna bring a lot of shit to the front line, because not only do it need to be said, but it has a lot to do with everything: politics, sports politics. You got regular politics, sport politics, the way some people in this world view the sport of MMA, because just like there's like other sports, like not every sport in this world get the respect that they deserve, whether it's for dangerous reasons or for reasons that it's not that tough to the masses, if that makes sense. MMA, you know, me walking around in town, I wear a lot of clothing. As y'all can see in my last video, I had my Pittsburgh stuff on. I mean, my hat, shit like that. But I wear a lot of excuse me, I can't even talk right now. A lot of clothing. You know, I wear my UFC shirts. I wear my Pittsburgh Steelers jerseys, my Los Angeles Lakers shirts. I wear anime shirts. Even the avatar on this profile is a selfie of me wearing my Sugar Sean O'Malley shirt. So I wear a lot of different shirts, right? And you know, when I wear my UFC shirt, shit like that, I get stopped by in public and, you know, we chop it up and shit like that. There are people in this world that still view the sport of MMA as like a medieval, quote unquote, medieval gladiator type sport. And it's really not like that at all. And one thing, and I might be bouncing around with this because it's a lot of shit in play that I'm gonna bring together. And I forgot who said this. But they said it to a T, what I've been thinking this whole time, for real. And the shit they said is actually what some people on the outside view the sport of MMA. So I forgot who said it. When I upload this video, I'm gonna go back and put it in the description box or whatever. And by the way, y'all like, share, subscribe, all that good shit. So basically they said he don't want to fight at the White House because it's basically like a lot of rich people, it's like they're fighting for rich people's entertainment, which is exactly what some people view the sport of MMA as. If you go back, especially if you don't know your history or whatever, gladiating or gladiator or gladiating, however you want to phrase it, it is a sport for slave owners. And you have all these different slave owners, not of like black people or anything like that, but just like slave owners really don't have to be like a race thing. It could be a multitude of things, because anything could be a slave to something if you're able to manipulate it and control it, and and basically like on some, you basically chain it up, chain it up and control it. It could be anything, could be a slave, right? So gladiating, especially if you go back and watch these movies like Troy, like all these war movies like Troy, the Gladiator movies, the second Gladiator that came out like 2 years ago, whatever. It's basically you have to fight in this big arena in front of citizens of that area and slave owners, and you have to fight for your right to live. And if you losing is pretty much death. Like the only way you lose is if the nigga straight out kill you right there. And him killing you, he's buying his right to live for so and so many days until they have to go back to that arena for another slave owner. So it's like slave trade and slave auction, but they made it a whole sport. Basically, that's how I feel the UFC White House card is. And it's a fine line when you bring in politics, like actual politics, to sports, because then you have the Democrats and the Republicans, and it's always going to be a never-ending cycle of going back and forth between the Republicans and the Democrats. So now you bring a sport like MMA to something like the White House, it's setting up for a recipe of disaster. Now, going to sports related with the sports politics, so there's some, because it's going to be at the White House, there's some people that's not going to be able to fight at the White House, and not seeing like a lot of shit being posted on social media about, I think Marab actually spoke about this. He's saying like no Russians or anything like that is going to be able to fight on the White House card. But, which, that could be true, but then the way Ilya Topuria is kind of, and Ilya Topuria pretty much said that he's fighting the winner of Patty and Justin Gaethje, either April or June. So they might put Topuria on that White House card. But you can already tell, and then even Islam Makhachev, to make it a step further, Islam Makhachev and Khabib and them boys, they pretty much said they're not fighting the White House. There's a lot of politics with that, and with their religion and where they're from. So it is a fine line with a racial thing and just straight up like real life politics, because now you're excluding a certain amount of fighters who come from different religions and ethnicity that either won't fight at the White House because of their beliefs, or they can't fight at the White House due to their beliefs and shit like that. Which is why I feel like UFC at the White House card, although for the scenery and the presentation outlook, it might be the best thing since the Sphere. Like, the UFC at the Sphere, I mean, on TV, it was good, but I can only imagine being there at the Sphere live. It was just fantastic. Like, it's something never been seen before. So, scenery-wise and the presentation more than likely is going to be one of the best, if not the best, we'll probably ever see in the UFC. But there's a lot of bullshit things going on behind the scenes that go along with this. And on top of that, so we're supposed to have it in June, right? The way they talking about loading up this White House card, because they trying to load this shit up like it's UFC 300. I don't want them to, how can I put this? Is it going to come to a point? Y'all remember how shit was with UFC 300, where UFC 300, to this day, a lot of niggas talk about 300 as being one of the best. My personal opinion, it's not the best UFC event that, you know, that they put out that I've seen, but it's in my top 5 list. You know, a lot of niggas that say 300, I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but a lot of niggas that say 300 is the best event they ever seen, they either a new fan or it's just on some recency bias shit. It's definitely top 5, if not top 3, but it's not my favorite. But they did load up 300 to be the best UFC event of all time. And then y'all remember, after 300, we had like, what, 1 or 2 months of like just straight, I wouldn't say straight bullshit, but coming off the high and wave of UFC 300, all the other cards that we had was nowhere near the hype of 300 on paper or in actuality fighting. So going back to the White House, I don't want them to put all their eggs in the basket for the damn White House, and then when we get to International Fight Week, because International Fight Week, because there's like, okay, so it's kind of like WWE. WWE have all these pay-per-view events and shit like this, right? But they always put on like 3 to 4 main pay-per-view events that's supposed to be like blockbuster. So you got January, they always start off in January with the Royal Rumble. Then the springtime, around like March or April, is always WrestleMania. Then for the summer, the main, you know, big event for them for the summer is SummerSlam. And then, you know, towards like Thanksgiving, it's Survivor Series. So that's like 4 major pay-per-views that they like to put all their effort into. UFC is the same way. We got the early cards, right? Then we have then International Fight Week is supposed to be the best summer card. And then towards the end of the year, the Madison Square Garden in November is supposed to be, you know, that type of atmosphere. So we always have one major big card in the beginning stages of the year, like January and February, to kick off the year. Kind of like how we is now. Like this year now, with UFC 324 and 325 going back to back, they trying to start off the year with a bang. That's it. UFC's always like that. They always start off with a big ass major pay-per-view card in the beginning of the year. Then we could get some, depending on how everything line up, we could get some in the spring, but they always put their eggs in the basket for International Fight Week in the summer, and then they put their eggs in a basket for the Madison Square Garden card in November. And then, you know, depending on who's left and shit like that, December always ends off with not a big pay-per-view, but it can compete with the big pay-per-views. I just don't want them, in a long way of saying it, I don't want the UFC to load their eggs in the basket with this White House card, knowing it's in June, and then we still got International Fight Week. Because the way it's looking, especially they talking about, like, they want to do like 7, and that's another thing too, because I put it on my notes on my other platform. They trying to have these politicians like Donald Trump and they sons and all this other shit. They trying to have them dictate who's on the card and, you know, how many fights we should have. I'm like, when have the UFC ever, like Dana, Mick Maynard, especially Mick Maynard, Sean Shelby, and them, when have they ever let outsiders have major influence? I mean, I'm not talking about some influence like, you know, if shit lined up like it's supposed to line up and everybody's talking about it, then they're gonna do it because it makes sense. I'm not talking about something like that. I'm talking about like shit to where all these matchups ain't gonna make sense, and you're letting somebody else who don't even know about the sport dictate who's gonna be on the card, whether logically or you know, logically or non-logically. Like, never in my years of watching the sport of professional MMA, and especially the UFC as a brand, they never let outside influence, they never let outsiders have a major influence. Because leave it up to them. Conor, John Jones, and there's like one other person I keep hearing. I gotta go back and do my research, but especially Conor and John Jones. Like, Conor, and I love Conor, but Conor is really not, like, in this day and age, Conor really don't do it for me like he used to. Like, and I still fuck with Conor, but I'm ready for them to put the new stars to the front line and have, like, maybe Conor gets like a card for like International Fight Week or something like that, but leave it up to like Donald Trump and them. Conor be headlining this White House card and shit like that. But damn, who is that? Just shining the light. But yeah, I never seen where, and I hope they don't fall for this trap, but I never seen it where they let outsiders have a major influence on, because we supposed to have what, like, they talking about like 7 to 9 title fights. Like, let's see. So we got heavyweight, light heavyweight, right? Heavyweight, light heavyweight, that's 2. Middleweight, welterweight, that's 4. Lightweight, featherweight, that's 6. 7 would be what? Bantamweight. 8 would be flyweight. 9 would be what? The women. So it'd be like 11 or 12, right? Logistically speaking, not every weight class champion is going to be ready for the White House card. Cause now you're saying if you want to have like 7 to 9 title fights, now you're saying we can't really have any title fights until we get to June. So let's just say hypothetically, right? 324, 325. As we all know, Patty and Justin Gaethje is for the interim, right? And 325, Volk and Diego Lopez for the featherweight strap, right? Let's just say those weren't title fights. We wouldn't be getting a title fight, let's see, January, February, March, April, May, June. We wouldn't be getting a title fight for like 6 whole months. Logistically speaking, especially because there's other variables to this shit. Y'all know, y'all watch MMA. There's other variables to this shit, like damages, injuries, timeline on what the fuck is he doing right there? He just flashing the light. Anyway, you got injuries, weight cut, not weight cut, training camp time, damages after the fight for the fights that's already taken place. Like, let's just say hypothetically, Volk, they want to have the featherweight title fight on the card, right? Volk beats Diego Lopez or Diego Lopez beat Volk. That fight, let's just say hypothetically, ends up in a bloody war, like on some BJ Penn, Joe Daddy Stevenson type shit, right? They might have a huge medical suspension to where they can't compete for like, let's say like 3 to 4 months. So not only can't you can't compete for 3 to 4 months due to whatever injury that you sustain, but then once you get healthy, that's when you can resume, you know, your fight camp and your training and your hard sparring and shit like that. It's not enough time. So realistically speaking, I see at least because all we got, the only title fighters that we know of so far is really Paddy Pimblett, Justin Gaethje. I can tell you right now, Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes might definitely be on that White House card now that Kayla got some fractures in her neck or whatever. Or I think it's like bulging disc or whatever. That matchup most definitely gonna be on the White House card. So realistically speaking, I'm gonna say at least about four to 6 title fights on that White House card. It's not gonna be nowhere near what they saying, because logistically it's impossible. Because as a promoter, and especially as a matchmaker, you putting all these fight nights together and shit like that, right? If you held some of these champions or half of these weight class champions back just for a damn White House card, you're holding up as a promoter and as a fight matchmaker. You yourself is holding up a division, and you can't do that. When we get on half of these fighters for holding up divisions because they want to go up and down a weight class without defending the belt, and then they decline the contenders and they want to cherry pick contenders. We get on their helmet for that. So you as a promoter or a fight booker, y'all definitely can't do that. And I know, and then Dana, I'm gonna speak on Dana in a minute, but yeah, you just can't do that. So realistically speaking, I only see like four, maybe at most 6 title fights, but it can't be no more than that. Because we have to have other shit going on. And going back to International Fight Week, I just hope and pray they don't load this shit up to the point where it's going to interfere with International Fight Week, because they having this shit in June. International Fight Week, for the past couple years, International Fight Week been like July-ish. But last year, I think like the last 2 years, it's been around June. So I don't know if they're going to do away with International Fight Week, and International Fight Week is legit going to be the White House card this year, or they're going to do the White House card, and then International Fight Week is going to be like quote unquote a stacked fight night card. That's how I feel like International Fight Week more than likely this year is not the main focus. It's probably going to be some, not a major stack card, like a fight night card that's always going to be stacked, because the promoters over there always put pressure on the UFC to put on a good quality card for them. It's the Abu Dhabi card. The ABC Abu Dhabi fight night cards, those are always going to be a stacked fight night card, because the promoters over there, they always put pressure on Dana and them to make the best available card for them. You know, we heard the stories like last year, Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby and them, they came up with a lot of fight bookings, and then Dana presented them with that, and they was like, fuck no, we not doing that. So they had to rearrange the fight night card. And I think that's how we ended it, especially when Khamzat, that was the rebooking of Khamzat and Robert Whittaker. Because Khamzat and Robert Whittaker was supposed to fight on another card. I forgot, was it a pay-per-view or another card? And then Khamzat got healthy, and they rebooked it for the Abu Dhabi card. So that's how I feel like International Fight Week is probably going to go, like that. And it's not going to be as stacked as the Abu Dhabi card. It's probably going to be like, the main event is probably going to be some stacked. The co-main event is going to be some stacked. And the third fight is going to be decent. And then the rest of the card is going to be like, eh. Like, niggas is gonna fight, but on paper it's gonna be you know what I mean? So this I ain't gonna lie to you. You can't convince me with everything in consideration. And then on top of that, with the politics, going back to the politics, with the politics, because of how people feel about Donald Trump or, you know, or the Republican side of things, whatever, you're going to turn off a lot of fans anyway. A lot of fans automatically is going to feel some type of way about politics. And then you bring that in with sports, and it's a recipe for disaster. That's why I feel this UFC White House card, it's not going to be detrimental to the UFC, because it don't matter what the UFC can do. They always going to bring in views and fans and shit like that. Like, because I went ahead and made multiple videos on how the UFC lost its integrity along the way with this whole ESPN shit, and we still bring in fans and fans and fans by the minute. But I will say, the UFC, it will take a small hit with this shit. It will take a small dent, and I feel like it's really not good for the UFC. Because how the fans view shit is gonna be one thing. When your own employees, aka the fighters, when your own, because that's what this is, to be on like some real world shit. You know, the fighters are the employees, and the UFC is the employer. When your employees is feeling some type of way about this, then it's not a good look. So I just don't see it being a, like, you know, a card where it's gonna be like the best shit ever, because you already eliminated half of your roster because of certain ethnicities and beliefs. Because the best thing we probably gonna get is like what John and Alex Pereira, niggas are talking about Jorge Masvidal coming back and Conor McGregor, and then who else? Like who else? You know what I mean? Kayla Harris, I'm telling you right now, Kayla Harris and Amanda Nunes gotta be on that card. Especially now with that with Kayla Harris's injury, that shit definitely gonna be on the main card. But then even that is like, how do women view Donald Trump with the shit that Donald Trump be saying about, you know, women, and, you know, the certain shit that he say about women? How do they feel about, you know, fighting the White House? And then on top of that, not a lot of people is even gonna have tickets to go to the actual event. Like from what they explained it's gonna be like a certain amount of people in the octagon, not in the octagon, but you know, when they have the events in the arena, shit like that, you have like the floor view, and then you have like the nosebleeds view, like towards the back half of the stadium and shit like that. So like the front view at the White House on the lawn and shit, where they're gonna have the octagon at, it's going to only be a certain amount of people, and then the rest of the people is gonna be like further back, and I think they're gonna have to look at a jumbotron and shit like that. Is like, viewing wise, especially if you've been to a UFC event, like I've been to a couple. I've been to a couple, and one thing I can say, well, scratch that, I'm lying. I've been to a lot of amateur MMA fights, but I do know from personal experience, I did have a chance to go to one fight, but from personal experience, from, you know, my personal friends and shit like that, they've gone to like 3 or 4, and they always tell me go to like 1 or 2 just for the atmosphere, especially if it's like a good card. Go to 1 on a normal card, on a normal fight night card in a major city, and then go to a pay-per-view, and then that's it. If you don't got like real money to spend on good seat tickets, it's really not worth it unless you just there for the atmosphere. You're better off just watching on TV. So this White House card is definitely going to be on that type of shit where it's kind of like you rather off just watching on TV. So all the way around, no matter how you spend it, and I know a lot of people's gonna fuck with it anyway because they're, no disrespect, well, all disrespect, half of the people in this world is just brainwashed and under illusion that this world is under a certain way, and they don't have the mental capacity in their mind to break away from that brainwashing material. So there's gonna be a lot of people that's gonna fuck with this just because they either Republican or they just like everything the UFC does, right? But for the most part, the way I'm looking at it, the UFC at the White House is really unnecessary. I don't think it's going to be that good at all. I'm going to still cover it and shit like that because more than likely, some of my favorite fighters that I like to watch is going to be on that card. But I just don't see it being a good card. Not a good card as far as like fighting wise, but like everything, all the outside variables. Like, this not going to be a good card. Cause it's a recipe for disaster. Because a lot of shit, the politics and all the other shit. But yeah, I just want to quickly speak on this. Y'all get ready. UFC 324 content is on the way. Still, I know I've been saying it over and over, but I still got other videos I gotta push out. Ooh, excuse me. So we're gonna get there when it's time. But nonetheless, till my next video, go ahead and skedaddle, man.